Lexus built one body around three very different answers: a 244 horsepower hybrid, a 221 horsepower front-drive EV, and a 338 horsepower all-wheel drive EV. They share the same name and the same luxury promise. They don't share the same curb weight, the same driving dynamics, or the same reason for being here. Comfort's the easy part, and Lexus knows that job. The question is, which ES looks smart when we leave the brochure behind? The 350h moves 4,000 pounds with 244 horsepower, and it'll get from 0 to 60 in 7.3 seconds. The 350e brings 221 horsepower, roughly 600 pounds, and somehow only loses a tenth. The 500e brings 338 horsepower, nearly 5,000 pounds, and enough motor to make that number look respectable. Lexus solved the lineup with three different calculators. Only the hybrid avoided adding weight before asking power to rescue it. The 350h uses the 6th generation hybrid system. 2.5-liter 4, 13.9 compression, 186 horsepower paired with electric motors that bring the system to 244. Under hard acceleration, the engine speed goes to where the efficiency map wants it until the road speed underneath catches up with everything else. The question is whether Lexus has isolated that behavior well enough to keep it from sounding ordinary. Lexus put paddle shifters on the hybrid and regen paddles on both BEVs. Same hardware in the same spot, completely different jobs. On the 350h, they simulate gears because the planetary ECVT has none. On the 350e and 500e, they adjust regen, which is useful, but not exactly a downshift. Lexus knows you want to use your hands, but the car changes the meaning of the paddle depending on which model you choose. When you launch or in straight line acceleration, direct 4 can bias as far as 40-60 front rear, putting more torque on the rear axle than the front. That's the 500e's best reason to exist. The 350h adds an electric rear motor that produces 91 pounds of torque, enough to help in the wet, but not exactly enough to make the car feel rear-driven. The 350e gets a front motor and an efficiency argument. Only the 500e treats the rear axle as part of the driving experience. The 350e is capped at 99 miles an hour. Apparently the 350h tops out at 124 miles an hour. The 350e costs more and tops out 25 miles an hour slower than the gas car. Two of these cars don't make a sound. The third one revs to redline and stays there until road speed catches up. Subscribers get the next review when it goes live. Everyone else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to know when the next episode drops on this channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. Steering rack is quick across all three models, as if Lexus wanted the new ES to feel alert even before it left the parking lot. The hybrid carries 2,348 pounds on the front axle. The BEVs carry 2,635 to 2,701. Same ratio, very different front end job. The hybrid feels tidier all around, which is where its advantage starts. Lexus put bigger brakes on the BEVs, 13.4-inch fronts versus the hybrid's 12.9s. 13.3 inches versus 12.5 at the rear. The reason is thermal load. The heaviest 500e weighs 794 pounds more than the all-wheel drive hybrid, and regen alone can't carry that on a long descent. Those bigger rotors exist for the second and third hard stop, not the brochure number. The hybrid never asks much of them to begin with. Same McPherson strut, same multi-link layout across the entire lineup, asked to cover everything from 4,000 to 4,900 pounds. The BEVs carry their mass low in the floor, which helps them feel planted even when they refuse to feel light. The hybrid carries less weight overall, but more of it in traditional sedan places, high and forward. One layout should resist roll better, the other should change direction with less negotiation. Speaking with the lead engineer, all three get different damping, and driving them back to back, they all have slightly different dynamic characteristics. The 350h feels exactly like an ES should. The 350e feels the most buttoned down, with the firmest compression and rebound calibrations. The 500e the softest, with the most luxurious ride and handling combination of the three. Every ES model gets 19-inch wheels standard. 21s are a BEV only option. On a 4,900-pound sedan, that choice buys a little sharper response and sells off sidewall, which is the part of the tire doing the unpaid comfort work. Buyers will spec the bigger wheels because they look better. Then the first broken expansion joint will explain why luxury sedans used to have sidewalls you could spot from across the street. The hybrid is never given the chance to make that mistake. Drag coefficient coefficient for the hybrid is 0.28. Both BEVs run 0.25. Lexus made the EVs slipperier, then gave them more mass to push forward. Spec the 21s on the 500e and the front track gets narrower by an inch. The stance gets more aggressive while the measurement goes the other way. Useful if you enjoy visual accounting. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, the merch store link is here. Your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and a little less time worrying about industry access. No pressure, just an option. Lexus raised the seating position for the new ES, and these days, if a manufacturer mentions seat height in a press release, it means the crossover people have entered the chat. Headroom and legroom stay consistent across all three drivetrains, so the packaging works. This is still a sedan, but it no longer insists that you sit like one. For some buyers, that's the point. For others, it's the quiet sound of the segment negotiating with gravity. This new ES has electronic door handles. Press a button and the door pops open. No normal pull, no direct mechanical conversation, just a 12-volt signal asking the car to cooperate. The handles look clean and feel modern, which is usually how this starts. They also depend on the electrical system behaving. A mechanical backup exists. Most owners won't look for it until the car gives them a reason. The premium trim gets New Lux, which is Lexus's name for synthetic upholstery. The BEV luxury trims move to semi-aniline leather with bamboo layering and a geometric pattern. The hybrid luxury keeps the New Lux. Both trim families get more than 64 ambient lighting options, which feels less like personalization and more like a meeting that escapes supervision. The Mark Levinson system brings 17 speakers and 1,800 watts on the higher trims. Active noise control and acoustic front and side glass come standard across the lineup. The cabin has the hardware to feel expensive. Trunk space is 13.3 cubic feet across the lineup, and the BEVs do not get a frunk. That's not specifically disclosed, but the architecture didn't make room for one. That'll be fine for most owners. It's still strange to pay EV money and not get the one packaging trick EVs are supposed to have. Lexus added "Hey Lexus," "Hi Lexus," and "Okay Lexus" as wake words. 3 ways to start the same conversation. Navigation runs full screen on the 12.3-inch instrument cluster. Lexus calls this a first for their interface. If this episode gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, hit like. It tells YouTube to share this with other people like you interested in an episode like this. Takes just a second. Nearly 1,000 of you voted for where I should spend my drive time with this new ES, and half of you used your vote to ask for the V6 back. Noted. As for those interested in the car that actually exists, here's what I found. As Fiandes Far said, the old hybrid jerked and tripped traction control over every pothole and called it un-Lexus. That was the old platform. This one has a stiffer unibody with a reworked rear, and over the broken pavement on today's drive route, it stays settled where the old car used to flinch. On the 19s, it rounds off the worst of it. The 21s on the BEV hands a little of that back over sharp edges. On where to spend the money, 30% of you said the hybrid. 18 said the 500e. 3 said the 350e. The 350e may be the slow one you can skip. The hybrid does the ES's job. As the 500e, it's quick and the all-wheel drive setup's real, but that's a lot of weight and money for speed nobody shopping for an ES asked for. Grant's Garage and Sean S. asked about noise. They're quiet. All of them. Wind noise is buried at speed, and the acoustic glass does the job that Lexus says it does. The BEVs are the silent ones, which is the whole point of a quiet sedan with no engine in the first place. Trevor Sutherland, you said nobody buys an ES for cornering, and 15 people apparently agreed. The steering's probably a little quicker than the car needs, so it actually turns in with less effort than you'd expect. The weight still shows up in transitions, most of all in the 500e. Still, the new 350h is much more composed than I thought it would be. Plus, it's being honest about not being a sports sedan. Half of you want the V6 back. Drive it, and you stop missing it immediately. The ES was always sold on quiet and easy miles, and those characteristics are still here. And plenty of you called this a Camry in a suit. The V6 was never the point of an ES. The point was quiet and not having to think about the car, and that survives the switch. Sure, it shares a platform with the Camry, and it still feels a step above it. Whether that's worth the price, that's the verdict. Next. The hybrid gives this chassis the least confused assignment. Move quietly, use less fuel, keep the weight in the sedan territory, and don't ask the buyer to pay for a drivetrain trying to prove itself. 244 horsepower is enough for an ES. The CVT will still do CVT things, but Lexus has thrown acoustic glass and active noise control at the problem, which is at least an honest admission. The 350e is the slow, expensive one. The 500e is the fast, heavy one. The hybrid is the one that gets to be normal, which in this lineup sounds like a competitive advantage. The 350h Premium Plus all-wheel drive lands at $57,295 with the stuff an ES buyer came for. All-wheel drive, Mark Levinson, heated and ventilated seats, heads-up display, and 44 miles per gallon combined. The 350e Premium asks $48,895 for less acceleration, more weight, and public charging in a car capped at 99 miles per hour. The 500e is quicker, but now you're spending luxury EV money to explain why your ES weighs like a crossover. Most buyers will look at the hybrid Premium Plus. That's the calmest decision in the room. The 500e is what you buy when you want 5.1 seconds to 60 miles an hour in an ES. The hybrid Premium Plus all-wheel drive costs $57,295 and gets 44 miles per gallon combined. That sentence does a lot of work. This new ES still works because the hardware supports the job that this ES was always meant to do. Quiet speed, low effort, and enough chassis to keep the car from feeling completely detached. The hybrid stays closest to that brief. The 350e and the 500e both ask you to pay for compromises the hybrid doesn't have. One body, 3 jobs. Only the hybrid fits the assignment perfectly. That's the all-new Lexus ES. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree. And if you want to help fund more of these, the link to the merch store is here. See you on the next one.